Welcome to Mystery Tales. I'm your host, Alexander Thorne. If you're new here, we specialize in immersive mystery stories inspired by the greats like Agatha Christie, perfect for relaxing with a cup of tea or while drifting off to sleep. Today we're diving into a brand new tale, Corpse Found at Trafalgar Square, a deadly Hercule Poirot case. This is a long-form story, clocking in at over 90 minutes of narration, so settle in comfortably. Chapter 1. Introduction and Setup. Before we dive in, a quick word to our wonderful community. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're listening from. Are you in the misty streets of London, where our story unfolds? Or perhaps somewhere far like Toronto or Tokyo? Your comments mean the world, so hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more soothing mysteries. Now, let's step into the fog-laden world of 1920s London, where the great Hercule Poirot faces an impossible crime. In the heart of 1920s London, where the city pulsed with the rhythm of a new era, Trafalgar Square stood as a grand stage for both the mundane and the extraordinary. The year was 1925, and the air was thick with the scent of coal smoke and ambition. Nelson's column loomed over the square, its stone lions gazing impassively at the bustling crowds below, tourists snapping photographs, vendors hawking roasted chestnuts, and gentlemen in bowler hats hurrying to appointments. The fountains murmured softly, their waters catching the weak autumn sunlight, while pigeons fluttered in chaotic harmony, as if privy to the city's secrets. It was a place where history and modernity collided, where the echoes of empire mingled with the hum of motor cars replacing horse-drawn carriages. On the evening of October 14, 1925, the square lay quiet under a veil of fog, its gas lamps casting hazy halos. Just a stone's throw away, on the elegant Pall Mall, stood the opulent townhouse of Sir Reginald Harrington, a titan of industry whose steel empire stretched from London to the colonies. At 55, Sir Reginald was a formidable figure, tall, broad-shouldered, with a mustache that bristled like a well-groomed hedge and piercing blue eyes. Old scores. The guest list was small but significant, each attendee tethered to Sir Reginald by threads of ambition, resentment, or desperation. First among them was Lady Evelyn Harrington, Sir Reginald's wife of 7 years. At 32, she was a vision of elegance, her raven hair swept into an intricate updo, her emerald eyes catching the candlelight like jewels. Her silk gown clung to her slender frame, but her beauty hid a restless spirit. Married for convenience, to secure her family's dwindling fortune, Evelyn had grown weary of Sir Reginald's controlling nature and his frequent business trips that left traces of unfamiliar perfume on his collars. She sipped her wine with practiced grace, but her glances toward the door betrayed her longing for escape. Rumors swirled of her flirtations with younger men, and Sir Reginald's public reprimands had only deepened her quiet fury. Could her desire for freedom, or a larger share of his wealth, push her to drastic measures? Next was Victor Langford, Sir Reginald's business partner, a man in his early 40s with slicked-back hair and a smile that never reached his eyes. Victor was a gambler in both cards and commerce, his charm as calculated as his investments. He had poured his fortune into Harrington's ventures, but recent whispers suggested Sir Reginald planned to exclude him from the lucrative American deal. Victor's tailored suit and gold cufflinks belied his precarious finances. A betrayal could mean ruin. As he swirled his brandy, his sharp gaze darted to Sir Reginald, weighing opportunity against risk. Was his loyalty to the partnership as steadfast as he claimed? Or did ambition conceal a darker intent? Clara Beaumont, Sir Reginald's niece, was a breath of fresh air in the stuffy room. At 25, she was a modern woman, educated at Oxford, with a sharp mind and sharper tongue. Her auburn curls and defiant posture set her apart from the era's demure debutantes. Clara dreamed of becoming a travel writer, exploring the souks of Marrakesh or the temples of Kyoto.
but Sir Reginald saw her as a pawn in his dynastic schemes, pressing her to marry a titled boor for alliances. As his heir apparent, her inheritance hung in the balance.
Threatened to expose Thorne's addiction to the medical board, jeopardizing desperation behind the doctor's calm facade. As he hovered near the buffet, his eyes avoided Sir Reginald's. Could a man of medicine wield his knowledge for harm rather than healing? Finally, there was Colonel Marcus Blackwood, a burly, red-faced man in his late 50s, whose military medals gleamed on his chest like badges of honor. A comrade of Sir Reginald from the Boer War, he carried the weight of old battles and older grudges. His booming laugh filled the room, but it rang hollow. Years ago, Sir Reginald had advised him on investments that failed spectacularly, costing Marcus his fortune, while Sir Reginald profited from war supplies. The Colonel's pride had never recovered, and his toasts to old times carried a bitter edge. As he gripped his whiskey glass, his knuckles whitened. Was his joviality a mask for revenge, waiting for the right moment to strike? The dinner proceeded with the clink of silverware and the murmur of strained conversation. Sir Reginald held court at the head of the table, his voice commanding as he spoke of his empire and his plans. "Tomorrow I meet my solicitor," he announced, his eyes sweeping the room. "My will shall reflect who among you is truly worthy." The words landed like a guillotine, silencing the table. Lady Evelyn's fork paused mid-air. Victor's smirk tightened. Clara's pen scratched furiously. Dr. Thorne coughed into his napkin, and Colonel Blackwood's glass hit the table with a thud. The air grew thick with unspoken accusations. As the evening wore on, cracks appeared. Lady Evelyn excused herself with a headache, slipping upstairs with a rustle of silk. Victor stepped onto the balcony for a cigar, his shadow flickering in the fog. Clara lingered in the study, arguing with Sir Reginald over her future, her voice low but fierce. Dr. Thorne checked his pocket watch repeatedly, as if time itself were his enemy. Colonel Blackwood proposed a toast to loyalty, his eyes locked on Sir Reginald with unsettling intensity. By midnight in his hand, how had he, or his body, appeared there, unseen by the vigilant constables? An impossible crime, a puzzle worthy of Hercule Poirot's little grey cells, was about to unfold. Chapter 2. The Crime Discovered. The morning of October 15th, 1925, broke over London with a shroud of mist that clung to the city like a ghostly veil. Trafalgar Square, usually a hub of morning activity with vendors setting up stalls and early commuters bustling past, lay unusually still. The air was damp, carrying the faint tang of coal smoke and wet stone. Nelson's column stood resolute, its 4 stone lions gazing impassively as the first rays of sunlight pierced the fog, glinting off the square's fountains. The water's gentle gurgle was the only sound, save for the occasional coo of pigeons scavenging for crumbs. It was a scene of deceptive tranquility, one that masked the horror about to unfold. At precisely 5:30 a.m., Mr. Thomas Higgins, a milkman of 20 years' service, trundled his cart along the square's perimeter, his horse's hooves clopping softly on the cobblestones. Higgins was a man of routine, his wiry frame hunched against the chill, his cap pulled low over weathered features. He knew every corner of this route, every shadow cast by the square's grand architecture. But this morning, as he rounded the base of Nelson's column, his heart lurched. There, sprawled face down on the dew-kissed grass, lay a body, a man in a fine wool coat, arms outstretched as if reaching for the column's base. A small glass vial glinted in his rigid hand, catching the faint dawn light. "Lord preserve us!" Higgins gasped, his milk bottles rattling as he stumbled back. The man was unmistakably dead, his face frozen in a grimace of agony, lips tinged blue. The vial, half empty, gave off a faint, bitter almond scent, cyanide, as later tests would confirm. Higgins's shouts echoed across the square, drawing a small crowd of early risers, a street sweeper, a newsboy, a baker's apprentice. "It's Sir Reginald Harrington!" the newsboy cried, recognizing the industrialist's distinctive mustache and imposing frame from news.
Grass. No signs of a struggle. The scene was pristine. Impossibly so. Word of the discovery spread like wildfire through London's morning streets. By 6 a.m., Inspector Arthur Japp of Scotland Yard arrived, his trench coat flapping in the breeze, his face set in a familiar scowl. Japp was a man of action, not theories, with a bulldog's tenacity and a healthy skepticism of fanciful detective work. "Blimey, this is a queer one," he muttered, crouching beside Sir Reginald's body. The industrialist's expensive watch, stopped at 1:15 a.m., dangled from his waistcoat. A crumpled note protruded from his pocket, its ink smudged but legible. "The lion's roar hides the truth." Japp frowned. "Suicide? Or something cleverer?" The vial suggested self-poisoning, but the location, smack in the center of a guarded square, defied logic. The coroner, Dr. Malcolm Price, arrived shortly after, a dour man with a clipboard and a penchant for precision. He confirmed cyanide poisoning, noting rigor mortis suggested death between midnight and 2 a.m. "Swift and brutal," Price said, sniffing the vial. "He'd have been dead in minutes." But how had Sir Reginald, last seen alive in his Pall Mall townhouse, ended up here? The townhouse was a mere 5-minute walk away, yet moving a body through London streets, past vigilant constables, seemed impossible. Japp's men searched the square for clues, a dropped cigarette, a stray fiber, but found nothing. The fountains burbled on, indifferent to the mystery. News reached Sir Reginald's household by 7 a.m. Lady Evelyn Harrington, roused from her bed, appeared at the scene in a black silk dressing gown, her raven hair disheveled. "Reginald!" she wailed, collapsing into the arms of the maid, her sobs theatrical, yet convincing. "He was fine when I left him last night." Her emerald eyes brimmed with tears, but Japp noted her quick recovery, her gaze darting to the crowd. Was her grief genuine, or a performance honed by years of high society? Victor Langford, Sir Reginald's business partner, arrived next, his slicked-back hair.
Elias Thorne, the family physician, was summoned to confirm death. His spectacles glinted as he examined the body, his hands steady, despite his known gambling debts. "Cyanide, no doubt," he murmured, avoiding Japp's gaze. Sir Reginald had recently refused him a loan. Had desperation driven him to darker acts? Thorne's claim of retiring early after the party felt flimsy, unsupported by witnesses. Colonel Marcus Blackwood stormed onto the scene last, his military medals clinking, his face flushed with indignation. "My old friend, struck down like this," he bellowed, demanding justice. Yet Japp recalled rumors of a Boer War betrayal, Sir Reginald's profiteering at Blackwood's expense. The colonel's bluster seemed forced, his eyes scanning the square as if searching for an escape. The press descended by 8 a.m., their cameras flashing as headlines took shape. "Millionaire's mysterious end in heart of empire." Reporters swarmed Constable Wilkins, who stuck to his story. "I saw nothing, heard nothing." The square's openness made the crime baffling. No cover for a killer to approach, no way to deposit a body without detection. Japp scratched his head, muttering about ruddy impossibilities. Meanwhile, in his Whitehaven mansion's flat, Hercule Poirot sipped his morning tisane. The newspaper spread before him. The headline caught his eye, and his moustache twitched with intrigue. Mon Dieu! A body in Trafalgar Square, placed like a statue. This is no accident. It is a challenge to the little grey cells. He reached for the telephone, dialing Japp. "Mon ami, You have need of Poirot for this puzzle, no? Japp, exasperated but relieved, agreed to meet him at the scene. Poirot adjusted his tie, his mind already turning over the paradox. A man dead in an open square, unseen, unheard, as if spirited there by phantoms. As the body was carted away under a tarp, the crowd dispersed, leaving the square to its pigeons and fountains. The lions watched silently, their stone faces betraying nothing. But secrets lingered in the fog, waiting for Poirot's meticulous mind to unravel them. The note, "The lion's roar hides the truth," hinted at deception. Of the pavement, while curious onlookers lingered, whispering theories of suicide and murder. Hercule Poirot arrived at the scene with his characteristic flair, his patent leather shoes gleaming despite the dust of London's streets. His moustache, impeccably waxed, twitched as he surveyed the square, his green eyes sharp with curiosity. "Bonjour, mon ami Inspector Japp," he called, tipping his hat. Japp, his trench coat rumpled and his brow furrowed, stood near the base of the column, barking orders to his men. "Poirot, you're a sight for sore eyes," Japp grumbled, though his relief was palpable. "This case is a devil's knot. Body appears out of thin air. No witnesses, no nothing." Poirot's lips curled into a faint smile. "No, Inspector. There is always something. The truth it hides, but it cannot run from Hercule Poirot." Poirot began his examination with meticulous care, circling the spot where Sir Reginald had been found. The grass was still damp from the morning dew, undisturbed except for the faint imprint of the body. No footprints, no drag marks, no signs of a ladder or hoist. The vial of cyanide, now in Scotland Yard's custody, had been clutched in Sir Reginald's hand, its bitter almond scent unmistakable. The note, "The lion's roar hides the truth," lay folded in Japp's notebook, its cryptic words nagging at Poirot's mind. The industrialist's watch, stopped at 1:15 a.m., suggested a timeline, but was it accurate? "The scene, it is too perfect," Poirot murmured. "The tableau staged for deception." Japp recounted the constable's reports. The square was locked at night, its gates guarded by officers who swore no one had passed. Constable Wilkins, still shaken, repeated his story. "I circled every hour, sir. Fog was thick, but I'd have seen a man carrying a body." Poirot nodded, his eyes scanning the railings, the fountains, the nearby buildings. "And yet, a body does not walk itself," he said softly. "We must ask, was Sir Reginald killed here, or brought here? And if brought, how?" Japp scratched his head. "Beats me. No cart, no wheel marks, nothing." Calculation. "An argument, madame? Of what nature?" Evelyn hesitated, dabbing her eyes with a lace handkerchief. "He was distant. I suspected affairs, but murder? Never. Motive? A marriage strained by infidelity, and the promise of a vast inheritance. Her alibi? She retired to her room alone, lacked witnesses." Victor Langford leaned against the fireplace, a cigarette dangling from his lips. His slicked-back hair and tailored suit couldn't mask his unease. "Harrington was my partner, Poirot," he said, exhaling smoke. "Business was rocky, I'll admit. But kill him? That's absurd." Poirot tilted his head. "And yet, monsieur, I hear Sir Reginald planned to exclude you from a deal with the Americans. A blow to your finances, no?" Victor's smirk faltered. "Rumors. I was home by 11:30, alone. Motive. Financial ruin loomed if betrayed." His nervous puff on the cigarette spoke louder than his words. Clara Beaumont sat by the window, her auburn curls catching the light, her notebook open on her lap. "Uncle Reginald was a tyrant," she said bluntly, her pen pausing. "He wanted to control my life, marry me off like some prize mare. But I wouldn't risk my future by killing him." Poirot noted her candor, her defiance. As Sir Reginald's heir, her inheritance depended on his will, which he'd threatened to revise. "You argued with him last night, mademoiselle?" Clara nodded. "In the study, about my travels. But I left him alive. Motive, freedom and wealth. Her alibi, like the others, was uncorroborated." Dr. Elias Thorne stood near a bookshelf, his spectacles slipping down his nose. His hands, usually steady from years of medical practice, fidgeted with his watch chain. "I treated Sir Reginald for a heart condition, digitalis, carefully dosed," he said. "Cyanide? I'd never touched the stuff." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Yet, docteur, you owed debts, and Sir Reginald refused you a loan, threatening to expose your habits." Thorne paled. "Gambling, yes, but I'm no murderer. I was home by midnight. Motive, traitor!"
Around midnight, followed by a door slamming. "I thought it was just his temper, sir," she whispered. Poirot's fingers traced the desk, stopping at a small safe hidden behind a portrait. Japp opened it, revealing a draft of Sir Reginald's will, dated the day before. It favored Clara and Lady Evelyn, cutting out Victor and Blackwood entirely. "A motive for some," Poirot mused, "or a distraction for others." Further inspection yielded more. A crumpled pawn ticket in a drawer, linked to a watch not Sir Reginald's, but engraved, "To Victor, with regret." Victor claimed it stolen, but Poirot sensed deception. A faint scent of Lady Evelyn's perfume lingered on the note found on the body, raising questions of her involvement. The stopped watch, 1:15 a.m., nagged at Poirot. Was it tampered with to mislead the time of death? And the note, "The lion's roar hides the truth," what did it mean? The fountain's sound, perhaps, or a metaphorical lion among the suspects. Poirot returned to the square, walking its perimeter with Japp. The gates, locked at night, showed no signs of tampering. The constable's logs were consistent, no unusual activity. Yet the body's placement suggested audacity, a killer who mocked the very openness of the square. "This is no random act," Poirot said, his voice low. "It is a performance, a challenge to logic." Japp sighed. "Well, Poirot, your logic better hurry up. The press is baying, and the commissioner wants answers." As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows from the lions, Poirot's mind whirred. The alibis were flimsy, the motives plentiful, but the method remained elusive. How had Sir Reginald, or his body, crossed from Pall Mall to the square's heart? A cart? A disguise? An underground passage? Each theory crumbled under scrutiny, yet Poirot's grey cells churned, piecing together the fragments of an impossible puzzle. Chapter 4. Clues and Red Herrings. The investigation into Sir Reginald Harrington's death deepened as the October sun climbed high. Mind was already cataloguing every fragment of evidence, separating the genuine from the cunningly planted. Poirot began by revisiting the physical evidence. The pawn ticket found in Sir Reginald's study, tucked inside a drawer, led to a seedy shop in Soho. The shopkeeper, a wiry man with a nervous tic, confirmed Sir Reginald had pawned a silver pocket watch 3 days prior, not his own, but one engraved "To Victor, with regret." When confronted, Victor Langford's smirk vanished. "Stolen from me years ago," he insisted, claiming he'd last seen it during a business trip. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And yet, monsieur, it finds its way to a pawn shop now. Curious." The ticket suggested blackmail or a deliberate plant to incriminate Victor, a classic red herring that muddied the waters. Did Victor pawn it himself to create a false trail, or was another hand at work? Next, Poirot turned to Clara Beaumont's notebook, accidentally left open in the townhouse's drawing room.
Its pages detailed her plans to elope with a penniless artist named Julian Wells, a bohemian painter who frequented Bloomsbury's cafes. "I need funds to escape Uncle's control," she'd written, her words laced with urgency. Jap dispatched a constable to verify Wells's whereabouts, only to learn he'd been in Paris the night of the murder, exhibiting at a gallery. Clara's face fell when told. "Julian? In Paris? But he wrote to me." Her voice trailed off, and Poirot noted the flicker of doubt in her eyes. Was the diary a genuine confession or a staged misdirection? The elopement plot pointed to Clara's need for money, but the artist's absence dulled its edge, a red herring perhaps, designed to distract from her true intentions. At Dr. Elias Thorne's surgery, a search uncovered a troubling find: several bottles of potassium cyanide, labeled for medical use in sterilizing equipment. Thorne adjusted his spectacles, his hands trembling. "Standard practice, Mr. Poirot," he said. "I've never misused it." Yet a ledger showed one vial missing, unaccounted for in his meticulous records. Moment of carelessness. Or was it planted to cast suspicion on his old grudge? The Colonel's club friends confirmed he'd ranted about Sir Reginald's war profiteering weeks before, adding fuel to his motive. But the medal felt like a theatrical flourish, a false clue meant to divert attention. Lady Evelyn Harrington provided another twist. The note found on Sir Reginald's body, "The lion's roar hides the truth," carried a faint trace of her signature perfume, a floral scent with hints of jasmine. When questioned, she clutched her handkerchief, her emerald eyes wide. "I wrote no such note," she insisted. "Anyone could use my perfume." Yet a search of her boudoir uncovered letters, hidden in a jewelry box, hinting at an affair with Victor Langford. "Dear E, meet me at dusk. We'll plan our future," one read. Unsigned, but in Victor's hand. Evelyn dismissed them as old flirtations, but Poirot noted her flushed cheeks. Was the perfume on the note a sloppy mistake, or a deliberate attempt to implicate her? The affair suggested a motive, freedom and wealth, but also a red herring if someone else knew of it. Poirot returned to the square, puzzling over the impossible aspect, the body's placement. He paced the perimeter, noting the locked gates, the constable's vigilance, the open expanse offering no cover. A balloon to drop the body? Absurd. A tunnel from the townhouse. Old maps showed sewers beneath the square, but inspections revealed them sealed. Constable Wilkins, under scrutiny, admitted seeing a ghostly figure in the fog around 2 a.m., but blamed his tired eyes. "Looked like a drunkard, staggering, then gone," he said. Poirot's moustache twitched. A figure in the fog, real or imagined? It hinted at a disguised accomplice, but Wilkins's story felt shaky, a potential red herring born of fear or suggestion. Back at the townhouse, Poirot examined the study again. The half-empty brandy decanter on Sir Reginald's desk caught his eye. A faint residue in a glass smelled faintly of almonds. Cyanide, perhaps. Midnight, contradicting his story. Blackwood's club porter noted he'd left earlier than stated, around 11 p.m. Each discrepancy tightened the net, but the method remained elusive. Poirot gathered the suspects for a second round of questioning, observing their reactions. Lady Evelyn's tears seemed rehearsed, Victor's nonchalance forced, Clara's defiance tinged with fear, Thorne's calm cracking under pressure, Blackwood's bluster overly loud. "Each of you hides something," Poirot said, his voice soft but piercing. "The truth, it is like the fog. It obscures, but it will lift." Jap, watching, muttered, Hope it lifts soon, or the commissioner'll have my head." As dusk fell, Trafalgar Square glowed under gas lamps, its fountains shimmering. Poirot stood alone, staring at the lions. "You saw it all, mes amis," he whispered. "But what did you see?" The clues, pawn ticket, diary, cyanide, medal, perfume, note, wove a tapestry of truth and deception. Some pointed to guilt, others to misdirection. The red herrings were piling up, but Poirot's gray cells were relentless, sifting fact from fiction in pursuit of the impossible answer. Chapter 5. Complications and Twists. By October 17, 1925, the investigation into Sir Reginald Harrington's death had transformed Trafalgar Square into a stage for suspicion and secrecy. The autumn air grew sharper, the fog thicker, as if London itself conspired to obscure the truth. Hercule Poirot, his bowler hat tilted against the breeze, stood in the square, his eyes tracing the contours of Nelson's column. The stone lions, ever watchful, seemed to taunt him with their silence. "The puzzle, it grows complex," he murmured, his mustache twitching. "But complexity is merely truth wearing a mask." Inspector Japp, pacing nearby, was less philosophical. "Blast it, Poirot! We're drowning in clues and none fit the lock." The investigation had hit a snag, with alibis crumbling and new evidence complicating the picture. A second note surfaced, found by a maid in Sir Reginald's townhouse, tucked inside. Prescriptions bore similar handwriting. "Check his surgery ledgers," he thundered. Poirot, observing their spat, noted the desperation in their voices. The note's ambiguity, was it genuine or a red herring, added a layer of intrigue, muddying motives. Clara Beaumont's actions raised further questions. A shopkeeper near Trafalgar Square recalled seeing her at 10 p.m. on the night of the murder, buying a bottle of ink, not far from the crime scene. When confronted, Clara's defiance wavered. "I needed it for my writing," she said, clutching her notebook. "I often wander at night for inspiration." Yet her proximity to the square, unmentioned before, tightened the net. Poirot probed deeper, learning from her landlady that Clara had burned papers in her fireplace that morning. Letters, perhaps? Poirot mused. Or evidence? Clara's motive, freedom from her uncle's control, gained weight, but her secrecy hinted at a larger role. Was she hiding a connection to the midnight meeting? Lady Evelyn Harrington's behavior added a dramatic twist. On the evening of October 16th, she vanished from the townhouse, leaving a note claiming she needed time to grieve. Japp's men caught her at Victoria Station, boarding a train to Dover with a packed suitcase. "I was scared," she protested, her emerald eyes flashing. "The murderer could come for me next." Poirot, unconvinced, pressed her on the perfume-scented note found on Sir Reginald. "Madame, your fear. It is selective. Why flee now?" Evelyn admitted witnessing Clara arguing with Sir Reginald in the study, overhearing heated words about her inheritance. "She threatened to ruin him," Evelyn said, but Poirot sensed deflection. Was her flight an admission of guilt or a staged panic to obscure her role in an affair with Victor? Dr. Thorne's facade cracked under scrutiny. A creditor, emboldened by the murder's publicity, revealed Thorne had borrowed heavily to cover gambling debts, with Sir Reginald as his guarantor, until the industrialist withdrew support. "He threatened to expose me," Thorne confessed, his spectacles fogging. "But I didn't kill him." A twist emerged by a cab driver who recognized his military bearing. "I was walking off my anger," Blackwood said, but his alibi weakened. His grudge, rooted in wartime betrayal, felt personal. But was the medal a genuine slip or a deliberate misdirection? The impossible aspect of the crime gnawed at Poirot. He explored the townhouse's basement, prompted by the maid's report of footsteps. Old architectural plans revealed a sealed smuggling tunnel from the 18th century, linking Pall Mall to the square's sewers. Japp's men investigated, finding the tunnel collapsed, its entrance bricked up. "No way through," Japp said. But Poirot lingered, noting fresh scratches on the basement wall. A secret passage, perhaps? The theory tantalized but fizzled, too impractical for a body's transport. Another twist. A groundskeeper reported a wheelbarrow missing from a nearby workshed, found later in an alley with traces of mud. Had it carried the body disguised in the fog? The idea was bold, but the square's openness made it improbable. The stopped watch, 1:15 a.m., revealed a complication. A jeweler, consulted by Poirot, confirmed it had been wound down, not stopped by impact or death. "Someone set the time," the jeweler said. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A deception to mislead us." Was the watch tampered with to suggest an earlier death, protecting the killer's timeline? The note's reference to the lion's roar gnawed at him. He stood by the fountains, their splash louder at night. Could this sound mask a crime? He wondered. A constable admitted hearing a faint clatter around 2 a.m., dismissed as street noise. Another red herring? Or a clue to the body's placement? Suspicions shifted as alliances formed and broke. Victor and Lady Evelyn were seen whispering at the townhouse, their glances furtive. Clara accused Evelyn of manipulating Sir Reginald's will, citing overheard plans to favor her. Blackwood and Thorne exchanged heated words, each blaming the other for the metal and cyanide. Poirot observed, his mind mapping their interactions. "They accuse to protect themselves," he told Japp. "But one, or more, knows the truth." A final twist emerged from the square itself. Astrida whispered, "But I shall find it." The web of clues and red herrings grew denser, but the detective's resolve was unshaken, his mind a beacon in the fog of deception. On the eve of October 18th, 1925, the drawing room of Sir Reginald Harrington's Pall Mall townhouse was a stage set for revelation. The air was thick with anticipation, the chandeliers casting a golden glow over the gathered suspects. Hercule Poirot stood at the center, his small frame commanding the room, his green eyes gleaming with certainty. The velvet curtains were drawn, the fire crackled in the hearth, and the 5 suspects, Lady Evelyn Harrington, Victor Langford, Clara Beaumont, Dr. Elias Thorne, and Colonel Marcus Blackwood, sat in a tense semicircle. Inspector Japp leaned against the doorframe, his notebook poised, while the faint hum of Trafalgar Square's evening bustle drifted through the windows. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his voice soft yet piercing. "This is no ordinary crime. It is an impossible puzzle. A body placed in the heart of a guarded square, unseen, unheard. But the little gray cells, they have worked tirelessly, and the truth, it is now clear." The suspects shifted uneasily, their faces a gallery of fear, defiance, and curiosity. "This was no suicide," Poirot continued, "nor a simple murder. It is a masterpiece of deception, and I shall reveal its architect." Poirot paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. "Let us begin with the crime. Sir Reginald Harrington was found dead at the base of Nelson's column, a vial of cyanide in his hand. His watch stopped at 1:15 a.m. A note reading, "The lion's roar hides the truth." The square was locked, patrolled, yet no one saw the body's arrival. How? We must first ask, where did he die? He paused, letting the question hang. The brandy glass in his study, it held traces of cyanide. Sir Reginald was poisoned here, in this very house, between midnight and 1 a.m., as rigor mortis and the coroner confirmed. "Victor Langford," Poirot continued, Your financial ruin loomed if Sir Reginald cut you from the American deal. The pawn ticket for a watch engraved to you hinted at blackmail, but you claimed it stolen. A lie or a plant? Victor's smirk faltered, his cigarette unlit in his hand. Clara Beaumont, Poirot said, turning to the young woman, your dreams of freedom clashed with your uncle's control. Your diary spoke of elopement, needing funds, and your presence near the square that night raises questions. Yet your candor, it is disarming. Clara clutched her notebook, her face pale. Dr. Thorne, Poirot said, his voice sharpening, your debts and Sir Reginald's threat to expose you gave motive. The missing cyanide vial from your surgery is damning, and your knowledge of poisons from treating Monsieur Langford years ago is curious. Thorne's spectacles slipped, his hands trembling. Colonel Blackwood, Poirot concluded, your grudge from the Boer War burned hot. The medal found near the body pointed to you, but was it yours or placed to deceive? Your alibi, it crumbles with the cab driver's testimony. Blackwood's fists clenched, his red face glowing with indignation. Poirot paused, letting the tension build. The alibis, they are all weak. Each of you was alone after the soirée, but let us examine the second note. Meet at the Lion at midnight. It lured Sir Reginald. But to where? Not the square, but here, in the study. The poison was in his brandy, administered by one who knew his habits. Japp leaned forward, scribbling furiously. Now, the impossible, Poirot said, his voice rising. The body's transport. No tunnel, no balloon, no catapult as I first mused. The wheelbarrow, found in an alley, was a clue, but not the answer. The truth lies in simplicity, a delivery cart, disguised as a milkman's, driven through the fog at 4 a.m. The urchin saw it. The constable dismissed it as a drunkard. 1 o'clock, as you claimed. Victor's face drained of color, his cigarette falling to the floor. But why the square? Clara asked, her voice trembling. Poirot nodded. A statement, mademoiselle. To humiliate Sir Reginald, to show your power over his empire, as he planned to ruin you. The lion's roar was your audacity, hiding in plain sight. Japp stepped forward, handcuffs ready. Victor Langford, you're under arrest. The room erupted in gasps. Lady Evelyn sobbed. Clara stared in shock. Thorne exhaled in relief. Blackwood muttered curses. Victor, cornered, slumped in his chair. He betrayed me, he spat. Took my money, my future. He deserved it. Poirot shook his head. No one deserves death, monsieur. Only justice. Poirot explained the red herrings, the pawn ticket, a distraction Victor planted to suggest blackmail, the diary, Clara's genuine but irrelevant plan, the medal, stolen from Blackwood's club to frame him, the perfume, a clever touch to point to Evelyn. The second note was a lure, written post-murder to confuse the timeline. The cyanide vial, stolen from Thorne, sealed Victor's plan. Each clue, meticulously placed, unraveled under Poirot's logic. Japp clapped Poirot's shoulder. You've done it again, old chap. Poirot bowed slightly. The grey cells, they do not rest until order is restored. As Victor was led away, the drawing room fell silent, the weight of truth settling over the suspects. Trafalgar Square, outside, shimmered under moonlight, its secrets finally laid bare. Chapter 7. Justice Served. The morning of October 20th, 1925, dawned bright over London, the fog lifting as if to clear the way for truth. The grand courtroom at the Old Bailey was packed, its oak-paneled walls echoing with the whispers of reporters, spectators, and the weight of an impending verdict. The trial of Victor Langford, accused of the murder of Sir Reginald Harrington, had gripped the city. Headlines screamed of the Trafalgar Square mystery, and the public hung on every detail of the impossible
Confirmation of Victor's late return at 3:30 a.m. The stopped watch, wound down to mislead the time of death, and the forged note, "The lion's roar hides the truth," sealed his guilt. A calculated act of vengeance, Sir Charles declared, to secure his financial empire at the cost of a man's life. Victor's defense, a nervous barrister named Mr. Grayson, argued desperation, not premeditation. Mr. Langford acted under duress, he claimed, citing Sir Reginald's betrayal in the American deal. A moment of passion, not murder. But the jury, guided by Poirot's clear timeline, was unmoved. The note, planted with Lady Evelyn's perfume, was exposed as Victor's attempt to cast suspicion elsewhere. The pawn ticket, the Boer War medal, Clara's diary, all red herrings Victor had woven to obscure his path, were debunked one by one. When the landlady testified to hearing Victor's cart rumble out at 2 a.m., the courtroom gasped. Victor's composure cracked, his hands gripping the dock's edge. Poirot, called as a witness, delivered his testimony with quiet authority. "The crime, it was bold, yet simple," he said, his Belgian accent precise. Monsieur Langford used the fog, the fountain's roar, and the square's openness to stage his deception. But the little grey cells, they see through such tricks. He detailed the cart's journey, disguised as a milkman's delivery, and the deliberate tampering of the watch to suggest an earlier death. The jury leaned forward, captivated, as Poirot wove the threads into a tapestry of guilt. He believed he could outwit justice, Poirot concluded, but the truth, it is relentless. The other suspects called to testify painted a picture of a man driven by ambition and betrayal. Lady Evelyn, in widow's black, spoke of Victor's whispered promises of a shared future, her voice trembling with regret. "I was foolish, but not complicit," she said, her emerald eyes meeting the jury's. Clara Beaumont, clutching her notebook, admitted her own resentments but swore her innocence. "Victor knew Uncle's will favoured me," she said. "He used that to point fingers." Doc used to transport the body under cover of fog, timed to avoid the constable's patrols. The urchin, paid to distract with a staged commotion, sealed his plan. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," Victor said, but the jury's faces hardened. After a brief deliberation, barely 2 hours, the jury returned. The foreman, a stern-faced clerk, pronounced guilty of murder in the 1st degree. The courtroom erupted in murmurs, reporters scribbling furiously. Victor slumped, his defiance extinguished, as the judge sentenced him to hang. Japp clapped Poirot's shoulder. "You've done it, old chap. Clean as a whistle." Poirot nodded, but his expression was sombre. "Justice, mon ami, is a heavy burden. It restores order, but it does not heal the heart." As Victor was led away, the suspects dispersed, their futures reshaped. Lady Evelyn, now a wealthy widow, planned to sell the townhouse and travel, her grief mingled with relief. "I'll start anew," she told Poirot, her smile tentative. Clara, cleared of suspicion, inherited the bulk of Sir Reginald's estate, her dreams of travel now within reach. "I'll write of this," she said, her pen already scratching. Dr. Thorne, his reputation intact, vowed to reform, joining a clinic to repay his debts. "A second chance," he murmured, shaking Poirot's hand. Colonel Blackwood, his honour restored, planned a trip to Africa, seeking solace in old battlegrounds. "Reginald's ghost won't haunt me now," he said gruffly. Poirot walked to Trafalgar Square that evening, the gas lamps casting a soft glow over the fountains. The lions, silent as ever, watched as he stood where the body had lain. The human heart. It hides more than any square, he mused, his voice barely audible over the water's splash. The case had tested his grey cells, but the truth had prevailed. The note's lion's roar, the fountain's sound, had hidden Victor's footsteps, but not from Poirot's logic. The square, once a stage for deception, now felt cleansed, its bustle a testament to life's persistence. Japp joined him, offering a rare smile. "Care for a pint, Poirot? You've earned it."
Soothing counterpoint to the clatter of motor cars and the chatter of passers-by. The square had shed its role as a stage for an impossible crime, resuming its place as a monument to resilience and routine. Hercule Poirot sat in his Whitehaven mansion's flat, sipping a steaming tisane, his morning ritual undisturbed by the clamor of the city beyond. The newspapers, once ablaze with headlines of the Trafalgar Square mystery, now carried stories of new scandals and triumphs. Poirot, however, found satisfaction in the case's resolution. "The little grey cells, they have triumphed once more," he murmured, his moustache twitching as he set down his cup. The memory of Victor Langford's trial, his confession, and the unraveling of a meticulously planned murder remained vivid, a testament to the power of logic over deception. Clara Beaumont, Sir Reginald's niece, had emerged as the most transformed by the ordeal. The bulk of her uncle's estate, secured after Victor's conviction, had freed her from the shackles of his control. By March, she had published her first book, Shadows on the Square, a thinly veiled account of the murder that captivated literary circles. Critics praised its sharp prose and vivid depiction of London's undercurrents, though some noted its almost too personal tone. Clara, now 26, sat at a cafe near Trafalgar Square, her auburn curls tucked under a stylish cloche hat, a notebook open as always. "I owe you a debt, Mr. Poirot," she said when he visited her, her eyes bright with purpose. "This case gave me my voice." Poirot bowed, his smile warm. "Mademoiselle, the voice was always yours. The case merely opened the door." Clara's plans to travel the world were taking shape. She booked passage to Cairo, inspired by tales of the Nile, and spoke of exploring the markets of Istanbul and the temples of Kyoto. "I'll write of every place," she told Poirot, her pen scratching furiously. "But London, this square, will always be my first story." Poirot noted her newfound confidence, a stark contrast to the defiant but caged young woman he'd met months ago. Her inheritance, wisely invested, ensured her freedom, and she vowed to honor her uncle's memory by living. She now dismissed with a laugh. "A foolish fancy," she said, "but never again." Poirot, ever discreet, wished her well, noting that her grief, once theatrical, had given way to genuine renewal. Dr. Elias Thorne, the embattled physician, had taken his brush with suspicion as a wake-up call. His gambling debts, once a noose around his neck, were settled with a modest loan from Clara, who saw his potential for redemption. Thorne joined a charitable clinic in the East End, treating dock workers and their families with a quiet dedication that surprised even himself. "I've no taste for cards anymore," he told Poirot during a chance meeting at a medical conference. His spectacles, once a nervous tic, now framed a steadier gaze. The missing cyanide vial, stolen by Victor, had cleared Thorne's name, but the scandal had humbled him. "You saw through my weakness, Mr. Poirot," he said, shaking the detective's hand, "but also my innocence." Poirot nodded. "The heart, it can heal, Doctor, when guided by purpose." Colonel Marcus Blackwood, his honor restored, chose to leave London's clamor behind. The Boer War medal, planted by Victor to frame him, was returned, polished to a gleam. Blackwood, his red face now softened by introspection, booked passage to South Africa, where he planned to revisit old battlegrounds and perhaps make peace with his past.
"Reginald and I, we were brothers once," he told Poirot at the docks, his voice gruff. "His betrayal stung, but I'll not carry that grudge to my grave." Poirot, noting the colonel's new calm, wished him a journey of healing. "The past, it is a heavy burden, Colonel. Lay it down." Blackwood's parting handshake was firm, his medals glinting as he boarded the ship. Inspector Japp, ever the pragmatist, had earned a commendation from Scotland Yard for his role in the case, though he credited Poirot with a grudging grin. "You and your grey cells, Poirot," he said over a pint at a pub near the square, "made me look good, but don't let it go to your head." Poirot chuckled, declining the beer for a glass of crème de menthe. "The truth, mon ami, it is its own reward," he said softly. "But it also seeks redemption." The square, bathed in twilight, buzzed with life. A street musician played a violin. Lovers strolled arm in arm, and children chased pigeons. The memory of Sir Reginald's body, sprawled beneath the column, had faded from public view, replaced by the city's relentless forward march. Poirot tipped his hat to a passing constable, who nodded in recognition. "Evening, Mr. Poirot," the officer said. "Quiet night, eh?" Poirot smiled. "For now, monsieur, for now." As he returned to his flat, Poirot opened a box of his favorite Belgian chocolates, a small indulgence after a case well solved. The Trafalgar Square mystery, with its audacious killer and impossible stage, would linger in his memory, a reminder of the delicate balance between chaos and order. He raised a chocolate to the city beyond his window. "To London," he toasted, "and to the truths we uncover." Reflections in the Fog. By the late spring of 1926, the Trafalgar Square mystery had faded from London's front pages, relegated to the archives of Scotland Yard and the memories of those entangled in its web. The square itself, ever resilient, pulsed with the rhythm of the city. Vendors hawked flowers, artists sketched Nelson's column, and the fountains murmured secrets only the stone lions seemed to hear. The crisp April air had given way to May's softer warmth, but a faint fog lingered, curling around the square's edges like a reminder of the case's shadowy depths. Hercule Poirot, his bowler hat tilted against the drizzle, strolled through the square, his cane tapping a steady rhythm on the cobblestones. The case was solved, justice served, yet his little gray cells remained restless, pondering the human complexities beneath the crime. Poirot's flat at Whitehaven Mansions, a haven of order and symmetry, welcomed him with the familiar scent of polished wood and fresh tisane. As he settled into his armchair, a newspaper lay folded on the table, its headline a distant echo: "Trafalgar Square Killer Hanged." Victor Langford's execution had closed the legal chapter, but Poirot knew that truth places. "Mr. Poirot," she said, her smile warm, "this case gave me more than an inheritance. It gave me purpose." She showed him a draft of her next work, a tale of murder on the Nile, inspired by her upcoming travels. "You taught me to see the details," she added, her pen pausing. Poirot bowed. "Mademoiselle, the details, they are the map to truth. Follow them boldly." Clara's transformation was striking. Once a defiant young woman, caged by her uncle's control, she now radiated confidence, her inheritance a tool for exploration rather than greed. She spoke of her plans to visit Egypt, her notebook filled with sketches of pyramids and bazaars. "I'll never forget Uncle Reginald," she said, her voice softening. "He was flawed, but he shaped me." Poirot noted her lack of bitterness, a sign of growth beyond the case's shadow. "The past, it is a teacher," he said. "But the future, it is yours to write." Lady Evelyn Harrington, meanwhile, had embraced her new life with a vigor that surprised even Poirot.
Her Mayfair flat buzzed with the city's elite, her salons a blend of art, politics, and scandal. The widow's black had given way to vibrant silks, her raven hair now adorned with jeweled pins. Poirot met her at a gallery opening, where she stood before a painting of Trafalgar Square, its lions rendered in bold strokes. "This place haunts me," she admitted, her emerald eyes reflective. "But it also freed me." She spoke of her engagement to a diplomat, a man who saw her not as a trophy, but a partner. "Reginald's death was a tragedy," she said, "but it taught me my own strength." Poirot, ever observant, noted the sincerity in her voice, a far cry from the theatrical sobs of October. "Madame, the heart, it finds its path when the chains are broken," he said, tipping his hat. Dr. Elias Thorne's redemption was quieter, but no less profound. The East End clinic, where he now worked, was a world away from his former life of gambling and debt. Poirot visited him one rainy morning, finding him bandaging a dockwork.
Blackwood had joined a veterans group, sharing stories of valor and loss. "You were right, Poirot," his letter continued. "The grudge was heavier than the metal." Poirot, reading by his window, smiled faintly. "The past. It is a weight we choose to carry, Colonel. You have chosen wisely." Inspector Japp, now a minor celebrity at Scotland Yard, had framed his commendation, though he grumbled about the paperwork it brought. Over tea at Poirot's flat, he recounted the case's impact. "The commissioner's pleased, but I told him it was your show," Japp said, grinning. "Those grey cells of yours, Poirot, they're worth a dozen constables." Poirot waved a hand, modest but pleased. "The truth, mon ami, it is a team effort. You provided the canvas, I merely painted the picture." Japp laughed, promising to call on Poirot for the next ruddy impossible case. Their friendship, forged in the crucible of crime, was a quiet anchor in Poirot's ordered life. As summer loomed, Poirot returned to Trafalgar Square, drawn by its enduring pull. The fountains sparkled, the lions stood resolute, and the city's pulse beat strong. He paused by Nelson's column, where Sir Reginald's body had lain, now just a memory in the grass. "The square, it is a mirror," he mused, his cane resting lightly on the ground. "It reflects our secrets, our sins, our redemption." The case had been a symphony of deception: Victor's audacious cart, the forged note, the tampered watch. But it also revealed the resilience of those left behind. Clara's ambition, Evelyn's rebirth, Thorne's renewal, Blackwood's peace, all were threads in the tapestry Poirot had woven. He thought of the note: "The lion's roar hides the truth." The fountain's splash had masked Victor's footsteps, but the true roar was human ambition, greed, and betrayal. Yet Poirot reflected, it was also the roar of justice, of lives reclaimed. "London, it endures," he said softly, watching a child toss crumbs to pigeons. "And so do we." The square, leather shoes gleaming, strolled through the square one warm evening, his cane tapping lightly on the cobblestones. His bowler hat was tilted at a precise angle, his mustache impeccably waxed, but his green eyes carried a reflective glint. The case had been a triumph of his little grey cells, a puzzle of impossible complexity solved through relentless logic. Yet, as he paused by the fountains, he felt not pride, but a quiet contemplation. "The square, it is more than stone and water," he murmured. "It is a canvas for the human soul, its passions, its errors, its redemption." The Trafalgar Square mystery, with its web of motives and red herrings, had left an indelible mark, not just on him, but on all who played a part. Clara Beaumont, now a celebrated author,
had embarked on her long-dreamed-of travels, her inheritance funding a journey that took her from London's fog to the sun-drenched sands of Egypt. Poirot received a postcard from her, postmarked Cairo, its edges worn from the journey. "The Nile is as mysterious as Trafalgar Square," she wrote, her script as bold as ever. "Your lessons in observation guide me still." Clara's second book, Murder on the Nile, was already in progress, its pages filled with the vibrancy of her experiences. Poirot, reading her words in his Whitehaven mansion's flat, smiled faintly. "Mademoiselle Clara, you have found your truth," he said, placing the postcard beside his tisane cup. Her transformation from a defiant niece to a confident explorer was a testament to the case's unexpected gifts, turning loss into liberation. Lady Evelyn Harrington, now Lady Evelyn St. Clair, after her marriage to the diplomat, had become a fixture in diplomatic circles, her Mayfair salons the talk of London. Poirot attended one such gathering, where she greeted him with a radiant smile, her raven hair adorned with a sapphire comb. "Mr. Poirot, you gave me a second chance," she said, her emerald eyes free of their former shadows. She spoke of her new life, traveling between Paris and London, her husband's support a stark contrast to Sir Reginald's control. "The square taught me to live without fear," she said, gesturing cyanide vial. A specter that had nearly ruined him was now a footnote, overshadowed by his dedication. "You saw my truth, Mr. Poirot," he said, offering a rare smile. Poirot bowed. "Docteur, the truth, it is a healer when embraced." Colonel Marcus Blackwood's letters from South Africa grew less frequent, but more content. "The veldt has a way of clearing the mind," he wrote in his latest, describing a sunset over the plains that rivaled London's glow. He had found camaraderie among veterans, their stories easing the sting of Sir Reginald's betrayal. The Boer War Medal, once a symbol of loss, now rested in a museum, donated as a gesture of closure. "You were right, Poirot," his letter read. "The past is a choice. I've chosen peace." Poirot, folding the letter, felt a quiet satisfaction. "Colonel, the soul, it finds its home when it lets go," he said, his eyes on the horizon beyond his window. Inspector Japp, now a seasoned figure at Scotland Yard, had taken to regaling junior officers with tales of the Trafalgar Square case, always crediting Poirot with a grudging chuckle. Over a rare lunch at a Strand cafe, Japp raised his cup of tea. "To your blasted grey cells, Poirot," he said. "They make my job easier and harder all at once." Poirot laughed, his creme de menthe untouched. "Mon ami, the truth. It is a dance we share." Japp's commendation hung proudly in his office, but he confided that the case had taught him patience, a lesson Poirot found amusingly apt. "Next time, I'll call you sooner," Japp promised, and Poirot's mustache twitched with anticipation of future puzzles. Poirot's final visit to Trafalgar Square came on a balmy evening. The sky streaked with pink and gold. The square was alive. Street musicians played, lovers whispered, and children darted through the crowds. He stood by a lion, its stone surface warm from the day's sun, and reflected on the case's deeper lessons. The note, "The lion's roar hides the truth," had been Victor's taunt. The fountain's splash his shield. But the true roar was human ambition, greed, and the quiet courage of those who rose above it. Toward home. The fountains sang, the city hummed, and Trafalgar Square stood eternal, its last whisper, one of truth, unveiled. Poirot's steps faded into the night, his grey cells already stirring for the next mystery, knowing London would never lack for secrets to unravel.